By the time the trials were over, the name Ted Bundy had become one of the most feared in America. But the strangest chapter of the story was still ahead. Because after the verdict, after the death sentence, after the courtroom drama, Bundy suddenly started talking. Not publicly at first, but privately, to investigators, to psychologists, and sometimes to journalists. And what he began to reveal was darker than anyone expected. The silence before the confessions. For years, Bundy had denied everything, even when the evidence was overwhelming, even when juries found him guilty, even when the death penalty was handed down. He maintained his innocence. But on death row at Florida State Prison, time began to work against him. Appeals were failing, execution dates were approaching, and investigators realized something. Bundy might finally be willing to trade information for time. If he gave details about unsolved murders, prosecutors might delay the execution. So they began visiting him. Again, and again, and again. The interviews. One of the people who spoke extensively with Bundy was Robert D. Keppel, a detective who had worked on the case for years. Keppel didn't approach Bundy like a normal suspect. Instead, he asked Bundy to analyze murders as if he were a profiler. And Bundy agreed. But he rarely said, "I did this." Instead, he spoke in the third person. He would say things like, "The killer might return to the scene," or "Someone like that could keep souvenirs." Investigators understood exactly what he was doing. Bundy was describing his own behavior, without directly admitting it. It was a psychological dance, and Bundy was still trying to stay in control. The growing victim count. When authorities first began investigating Bundy years earlier, they believed he might be responsible for a handful of murders. But during the death row interviews, the number started growing. 10 victims, then 20, then more. Eventually, Bundy admitted to over 30 murders. Most experts believe the real number could be even higher. Many of the crimes happened in different states, including Washington State, Oregon, Utah, Colorado, Florida. Each location had missing persons cases that investigators suspected were connected, and slowly, Bundy began filling in the gaps. But even then, he never told everything. Some families never received answers, and some cases remain unsolved to this day. The psychological mask. Psychologists studying Bundy were fascinated by something. He didn't behave like the monster people expected. Instead, he often appeared calm, intelligent, even friendly. Experts studying his personality have often described traits consistent with antisocial personality disorder, a condition sometimes associated with extreme lack of empathy. Bundy could mimic emotions. He could pretend to care, but investigators believed the feelings weren't genuine. To him, people were objects, something to control, something to manipulate, and when they were no longer useful, they could simply be discarded. That realization made the crimes even more disturbing, because Bundy had lived among normal society for years, with no one fully realizing what he was capable of. The media obsession. By the late 1980s, the story of Ted Bundy had become a national obsession. Television stations covered every development. Newspapers printed detailed timelines. Psychologists debated what created someone like him, and the public had endless questions. How could someone appear so normal? How could a man with friends, relationships, and education commit such horrific crimes? The case forced people to confront an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes evil doesn't look frightening. Sometimes it looks ordinary. The final execution date. Eventually, the appeals ran out, and the courts scheduled Bundy's execution for January 24, 1989. The method would be the electric chair. At Florida State Prison, as the date approached, something unexpected happened. Bundy started confessing more rapidly. Investigators believed he was trying one last time to delay the execution, because every new confession meant more interviews, more investigation, more time. But the clock had already run out. The night before, on the final night, Bundy reportedly spoke with a minister. He also gave one final interview. During that conversation, He blamed violent media and pornography for influencing his behavior. Many experts later criticized that claim. They believed Bundy was still trying to manipulate public perception, trying to shift responsibility away from himself. Even at the very end, outside the prison, while Bundy spent his last hours inside the prison, outside, a crowd gathered. Hundreds of people. Some held candles. Others held signs celebrating the execution. News crews filmed the scene. And when the execution finally happened, cheers reportedly erupted outside the prison gates. It was a moment that showed just how deeply the case had affected the country. For many families, it represented the end of a long nightmare. But for others, closure never fully came. The legacy of the case. Even decades later, the story of Ted Bundy continues to be studied, not because of fascination with violence, but because of what the case revealed. It changed how investigators understand serial offenders. It helped advance criminal profiling, and it forced society to confront a disturbing reality. The most dangerous people sometimes hide in plain sight, behind smiles, behind charm, behind ordinary lives. And that realization still echoes today.